part. Thank you. I didn't get a microphone. This man helped me when I didn't know how to make a movie. I was making this thing called Roger and Me. And then I didn't go to film school, I didn't know anything. And he and a couple of his friends in New York City taught me a number of things and were very helpful. And I've been grateful to you for all these years.
Thank you.
I remember I showed you one of my early cuts, one of my final cuts. Came up to New York City. Where did we watch that at?
We watched that at my studio.
Oh, was it your studio?
On my studio, I remember.
And then your other friends who were New York documentary filmmakers were there, and they gave me such incredible notes and advice, and 3 months later I was in Telluride with the movie, and the rest was history. So.
And I remember going to the New York premiere, and you got a 25-minute standing ovation.
It was kind of, I know.
It was the most incredible thing I've ever seen.
I don't, well, how can people applaud that long? I mean,
my hands are still sore.
It was the most. I'm still on Michigan unemployment insurance. I'm getting $98 a week at that time, and I'm here. I'm in Lincoln Center, and you know, the head of the festival came up to me on the sidewalk afterwards, and she goes, "It was bigger than Kurosawa." And I go, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, his ovation was 8 minutes shorter." And I go, "Well, that doesn't speak well then of this crowd, because, of course, you know, Akira Kurosawa is one of the, the great filmmakers of all time. This was just a documentary from Flint, Michigan. But enough about me. I just have never had a chance to sit on a stage and publicly thank you for being one of my mentors and teachers. So thank you very much.
Anthony, one day I'll make a movie that's like 1% as popular as yours.
Put some humor in the next one. How do you laugh about this? I don't know. It's like the end of the world.
Look at The Simpsons.
Well, that's true. That's true. I don't know. Was it mentioned at the beginning that Robert made what documentary filmmakers consider one of the seminal films of the 1980s, a documentary called Radio Bikini. And it was a documentary about the atom bomb tests in the Bikini Islands. Was it right after World War II, right? Or was it
right? Yeah, 1946.
And what it did to the islanders and the islands and everything. But what a kind of risky, brave idea to essentially say there are people on the left who are questioning what has been one of the tenets of the left, which is anti-nuclear power. For good reasons, waste, meltdowns, etc. But we are past the needle, is way deep into the red zone on carbon emissions.
That's exactly right. And we need to rethink, the best definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And I think we environmentalists have kind of been doing that. And we've because of what I find there's a real generational split. And that when I've shown this film to young people, and I say, young people, I'd say anybody under the age of 40 who didn't grow up in the Cold War, the existential crisis for them that they're facing is climate change. And, the Soviet Union, the threat of a nuclear war from the Soviet Union, which is part of, I think, the core thing that made us all anti-nuclear, thinking we got rid of nuclear power plants, we could get rid of nuclear weapons. That's kind of ancient history. So, that thinking, rethinking this core environmental belief has actually been very easy for me to show, because I think there's a kind of, for most liberal Democrats, being anti-nuclear is like a default position, is like part of the program. But it's very broad, but it's very thin. And when you demonstrate, what's really going on, I found most people come around and go, yeah, duh. And the only real opposition has been from certainly in the press, from professional anti-nuclear activists, largely, and people for whom the threat of a nuclear war is still so deeply embedded in their psyche that they just can't get their head around this.
So then you haven't had to deal much with these, or you're a traitor to the left, or
Not that much. I mean, were there any guys handing out flyers today? No? No, there weren't. Because I've had there's the Helen Caldicott's group been handing out flyers saying Pandora's false promise, and they got a whole website dedicated to my demise. But, there's been a lot of contentiousness in the media about this. But what I think what the film has exposed is a real existing split within the environmental movement. This was a debate that was whispered in the corner at cocktail parties. Like, well, we were probably going to need it, but don't tell anybody. Now it's out in the open, and everybody's talking about it, and the anti-nuclear wing of the environmental movement has lost control of the narrative, which we've had for 40 years, which is like the waste is just toxic waste for legacy for future generations. If an accident happens, it may be rare, but it's absolutely apocalyptic, it'll end the world. On and on down the line. All the things I addressed in the film.
There are other whispers too, amongst people who care about the environment and amongst environmentalists that are not as loud as this one, but I hear them and nobody wants to say it out loud. Like, for instance, solar and wind are not going to save us.
No. That's the key thing, is nuclear necessary? I mean, I think that's the main, and we were just mentioning this before you came up, is the main thing, the main reason why you could maintain an anti-nuclear position is that we can displace fossil fuels with wind and solar. And we simply can't. We're not going to power Shanghai and Mumbai and New York and LA with wind and solar.
Well, we don't have a way to actually store it.
We don't have a way to store it. In order to make it work on a grid scale, you have to basically rebuild the entire electric grid of any given country.
Right.
You'd have to do this on a global scale, and there's no storage. And even then, you'd have to maintain the fossil fuel infrastructure for when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing.
And to completely generate electricity for a home, those two panels that you think you can put on the top of your roof, they can heat your hot water heater.
Right.
That works pretty well. But to provide electricity, I don't know what the exact number is, but I read some crazy number like you need a ½ acre of solar panels.
Not true.
No, I think you can
Is that
power.
more good?
You can do. Look, I got nothing against wind and nothing against solar. I think we're going to need everything. So, Michael, what do you think about all this? I mean, we met right after I made Radio Bikini.
Right.
And you invited my environmental film Earth Days here, and now are you surprised at this turn of events in my?
I was shocked to hear that you made this. Yeah. Before I saw it, it was like, wow. But because I have such respect for you, I went into it with an open mind. And I don't know. Honestly, I haven't made up my mind about how I feel about it, but I am open to the discussion, and I think I really wanted to bring this here. I brought Waiting for Superman, the education film here a couple years ago. It was a well-made film that I disagreed with. The film blamed the teachers and the unions for our problems with education. I thought that was not the problem. But I thought it was good to get the discussion going. And maybe it would inspire somebody to make the right film about what's wrong with our education system. And so that's where I'm kind of at with this. But I think the solar man in the back, I mean, he and I are like, we break bread at the same table. But I have started to question my own support of that. Not that I'm not supportive of solar wind. I agree with you. It should try everything and anything. But still, it's just like the electric car. Well, how much coal is being burned for that electric car? Yeah. And it's just like, and then when you think of all the things that are made with fossil fuel, let me see if I got to understand the film right. We've got a very serious problem with carbon emissions and what's happening to our climate. We may be too late. Maybe, I don't know. I'm optimistic, so let's say
I'm
not.
optimistic too.
Okay, so let's say not. Short term, we go to this, or go more to this, buys us some time to figure out how to make the switch from fossil fuels to whatever it is that our great minds are going to come up with.
Probably fusion, eventually.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I wasn't good in science. But so I'm open, I understand the concept of stopping drinking Coke because of the sugar in it and the potential to create obesity and diabetes. But switching to Diet Coke will maybe less calories and you may lose some weight, but you may die of cancer at age.
Natural gas is Diet Coke to me, right?
Okay, right.
Yeah, like from coal, like natural gas is Diet Coke.
But neither are the answer.
Two things. The thorium stuff is really exciting. There's a lot of exciting things in advanced reactor technology, and thorium is one of the most exciting things. But I totally agree with you. I think, in 2010, President Obama, in his State of the Union address, said that he would like to develop a new generation of reactors as part of a plan to solve climate change. And both sides of the aisle jumped up on their feet and applauded him, like he just talked about motherhood apple pie or saluted the military. I mean, it was incredible. Like, they never agree on anything. But Republicans like nuclear power for their own reasons, always have. Maybe because Democrats hate it, I don't know. If Democrats came to the table and said, look, we'll support nuclear power for our own reasons for climate change, if you'll support it, we don't even care if you believe in climate change. Don't force that on them. There's an opportunity, I think, for some compromise in this completely polarized situation.
Do you think that somebody who favors, if you're in favor of nuclear power, then you really shouldn't say you're in favor of nuclear power unless you're willing to have it built 2 miles down the road?
Sure.
Or do you think it should be built in somebody else's backyard? I mean, you know what I'm saying?
I'd be fine with one 2 miles down the road. I mean, they're all over France. I go to France often.
Well, that's the other thing. Yeah, I do too.
I'm not afraid of being contaminated.
Right. And I'm one of those Americans that doesn't hate France.
I hear you're quite beloved over there.
Yes, I've replaced Jerry Lewis as their American mascot. But you're right. They do it. They do it quite well, and they don't seem to have problems.
They live longer than we do.
They live longer than we do, and yes.
Your left?
My left.
Hi. I think one thing everybody has to realize in this room and across the country is you have huge populations in India, Pakistan, and China that are going to be consuming energy. And if you don't come up with something like this, or a good nuclear plant, they're going to burn vast quantities of coal, cut down vast amounts of forest land. Even with renewables, that takes up huge amounts of land space.
Do you think Chinese and people in India have a right to 2 cars, like we have?
I think
Each of
they
them
have a right to
Chinese?
sanitation. I think they have a right to sanitation.
No, but what is the world going to look like when each Indian and each Chinese has 2 cars, like we do?
I have no
Family.
idea. I think that what's going to happen is the lifestyle of the average American is going to go down. The lifestyle of a lot of people in the third world is going to come up. I think that the people that are in power will stay in power and try to accumulate more wealth because that's what they do.
No.
But I do think that as a person, there's an obligation to try and see your fellow man improve or have access to food, water, sanitation, and not be stuck in a life of impoverishment. And most of the world is in economic slavery to us anyways. We should do what we can to take care of them.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, I think it's a moral imperative. One of the biggest problems is population growth, and it's been shown that as you increase living standards, population growth rates decline dramatically.
And that's one of the biggest things that will help the planet.
That's one of the biggest things that will help the planet. Absolutely.
And next? Where are we
I
at?
have another one over here.
Hello, Robert. Thank you very much for the very informative film. I'm just wondering if you're aware of the Mark Jacobson articles that in 2009 he published that it was possible to power the whole United States with wind and solar, and in 2013, this year, he put out a paper, an academic paper saying how New York State could power their whole state with wind, water, and solar, and what you thought about that. And then also, it takes some time for that, but multi-nuclear energy, it's hard for them to be a bridge, as the problems you talked about, the permitting, the design, and I don't know if these fourth generation are really ready to become commercial yet.
Okay,
that's, well, I have read those studies. I would not dispute that that it's technically feasible, and what Mark Jacobson did, these are technical feasibility studies about whether you could do it with unlimited funds and unlimited political power. Read it. You know, he talks, the global thing is $100 trillion, I think. The global plan is $100 trillion, and that assumes dramatic reductions in global energy use over the next few years. Even the one that the study at the United States, massive ramping up of hydroelectric power. I mean, damming just about every river in the country. Massive ramping up of biomass. Massive ramping up of a lot of things that environmentalists would disapprove of. Plus, you know, a total rebuild of the electric grid. I mean, it's not that it would not be possible, and I'm not disputing that, but it's just not going to happen. And that's, if we rely on that, then, which is a lot of environmentalists read that and they go, well, okay, we're on the right path. We're simply going to go further into oblivion. And this proposal will have to be carried out all over the world. The United States is almost irrelevant to this. We could disappear off the face of the world. What's happening in China and India and the developing world, where CO2 emissions are going through the roof and energy use is going through the roof. I know, Michael, I'm not being funny. I'm sorry. But it's serious shit.
I don't want you to be funny.
You know, this proposal would have to be carried out in every country in the world in order to be effective. So that's fine. If America could do it, then more power to it. We could go wind and solar. Maybe we could afford to. Germany's trying to do it. It's not so successful yet. But, you know, more power to them. But we need everything. And there are going to be places where wind is more effective than not. There are going to be places where solar is more effective than not, and there's going to be places that's going to need a lot of nuclear. My point is that the environmentalists, those who care about climate change, need to engage in and open their mind and accept nuclear energy and actually support it as part of the panoply of zero carbon energy sources. And at the moment, the leadership of the environmental organizations are implacably against it.
Why?
I think it's large, and I've heard this from people who know these people, that they do whisper at cocktail parties that...
So why are the professionals?
I think their donor base is, their big donors are largely over the age of 60 and are implacably anti-nuclear. And if they came out and switched, their organizations would collapse. That's what
It's money.
How many people in this room support the general premise of this movie? That's extraordinary. Just about everybody here.
And who's opposed to it?
2.
So I'm really surprised.
You know?
Yeah, no,
I mean, even at Sundance. And you know Sundance, my God, right?
No, I thought you'd be crucified.
No, I got 2. I went into the world premiere at Sundance, and I asked for a show of hands before the film.
You probably asked to use the bathroom first. That's my pick. I have to walk off that stage.
Well, I was more worried after they saw the movie than before. But I came on stage before and said, "How many of you are in favor of nuclear or have a favorable attitude towards nuclear power?" I thought there would be no way. Actually, it was like 20%. I was like, "Wow, that's shocking." When I walked out of there, it was like 85%, and that's been consistent wherever we've taken it.
Who's going to insure it?
2 more questions. Who had the 2 best questions? Yes.
Michael seems to have been kind of hinting at it. I think the scariest shot, I think, to me is when you go around the Earth and the energy continues to increase with the power and the lights. And the thought that even if we did put in place nuclear energy, there's still everything else that's going on with the environment. I mean, I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that. Like, as you were making this movie and looking at the potential to actually create enough energy to maybe provide energy for, I don't know, say 14 trillion people, like does that seem real? I mean, like, what's your thoughts?
That's a great question, because the other assumption that we environmentalists have had going back to when I was in college was that we were going to run out of fuel. We were going to run out of fossil fuels. I mean, that's where the whole idea about energy efficiency and wind and solar originally came from. And as this gentleman over here, who I think left, was saying, you know, the rest of the world it's not about, are we going to let them develop? They are developing, and they are burning fossil fuels, and we keep instead of putting our technological prowess into building advanced nuclear power plants, we're putting it into finding more and more fossil fuels. And we keep finding more of it, and the price keeps going down. Gas is like cheaper than air. And that's the problem. There's plenty of fossil fuels to power that globe that's all illuminated. But if we do that, if we do it that way, we're completely toast. And it'll happen in our lifetime. It's that serious.
Well, I am really happy to have shown this, and I mostly liked my own assumptions being challenged. And I think, you know, people who consider themselves liberal, if you look it up in the dictionary, one of the definitions of it is that you are open. You keep an open mind to things, and I think it's important what you've done here, because I think we have to have this discussion. I think we are in really bad shape. I am concerned about some of the statements that are made by some of the professional environmental groups and environmentalists that I don't know what to trust sometimes, because I know that there's now self-interest involved. You know, my good friend down back there who said that there's 4.1 hours average of sun for the solar is, but that's if you average the whole year. We all know that there isn't 4 hours of sun here in Michigan every day, and so on those days there's no sun. How am I warming up my pizza? And
That's the question.
yeah, and it doesn't store like that. So I think we all need to have an open mind, and we need to start questioning these things, and we need to have, damn it, we need to have this discussion. And it shouldn't be it shouldn't be about ideological. I think we all need to probably tone down our ideology about this particular thing. And I'm going to say, I don't mean Democrat, Republican, I mean that, you know, you and I are religious fanatics, or have been, about anti-nuclear. Nuclear is bad, fear of nuclear war, everything you said. And we are the ones who should lead the discussion, because we come from that position. We don't take this lightly, but we want to have that discussion because we know that something is horribly wrong, and in our lifetime, I feel so bad for our kids and our grandkids. You and I may just kind of scoot out in time, but they will hate us a generation or two from now. And I like being liked, not hated. Thank you, Mr. Robert Stone, for making this movie. Thank you for coming to Traverse City. And thank you for what it meant to me. Thank you, everybody. Let's keep the discussion going.